The buttons feel really solid, so it's definitely kind of a trippy controller, but I don't know, it's actually pretty cool. Now let's go back to 1983, and if you were like me, you were probably still rocking the Atari 2600 with those really short joystick cables. I mean, that thing was really short at the time. It would have been awesome to have this. This is a wireless Atari 2600 system here. This is the base station, and you can turn it on or off here, and you can raise the antenna. This is pretty hilarious. It's almost like a CB radio. I mean, talk about 80s, right? Sitting next to your TV, this would be hilarious. And then here's the joystick, again with the wireless antenna. This is the antenna sticking out here. Your power button, your fire buttons here, and then your 9-volt battery would go right here. This was definitely like way ahead of its time and pretty advanced for the Atari, so a very cool addition. Next up is a controller that not a lot of people remember, and that is the official Arkanoid controller for the original Nintendo. Now, if you played Arkanoid back in the day on the original Nintendo with the original controllers, it was actually pretty hard because it was like digital, so it was very hard to control the paddle. Well, this thing is flawless control. If you are a big fan of Arkanoid, this is a really awesome control game. The only bummer is that, as far as I know, it only works for one game, and that is Arkanoid. So again, you have to be a huge fan of it like I am, but it's still very cool to own. For these last two controllers, we're going big. Now the thing is, if you're going to talk about big, you got to talk about the original Xbox. That thing was huge. And of course, the Duke controller, the original controller for that Xbox, was considered one of the biggest controllers of all time. Well, what's really funny is that this third party made the Power Pad, which is actually even bigger, and this is for the original Xbox. I don't know why they made this thing. It's so bizarre, but it's...
Hello. it's heavy, it's hard to control the bottle.
Go with his daughters and ride things, experience things with them rather than just sitting passively on a bench watching them.
Slightly bigger. So now the funny thing is that there's nothing really special about it. I mean, it's just a third-party controller. But actually, I don't mind it at all. You know, I'm a big guy, I got big hands, so this controller fits pretty well, you know, for me. But anyways, I thought I would just show it because it's that I didn't mention because I just don't own it yet. But that is the Resident Evil Chainsaw controller that was made. It was very limited edition and it's very collectible. So it's definitely one of the last controllers that I'm looking for in mine. If you have that controller, I'd love to know about it. What do you think? Does it play well? I mean, are you putting it on a
The reason I like the WonderSwan, well, there's a lot of reasons. A, I've always been a big fan of colored consoles, you know, ones that look pretty. I think that was honestly what originally drew me to the console, was that there's so many of these really pretty colors for it. But it's actually a really great handheld system. So it was designed by the same guy, Gunpei Yokoi, who made the Game Boy and the Game & Watch. And it's really neat because some games you play normally just horizontally like this, and then some games you play vertically. So there's some shoot 'em ups, there's some puzzle games, that sort of thing, where you play like this. So I like that it's really versatile. I also just like collecting for it because, well, unlike Game Boy games, I mean, they also come in the cardboard boxes and can be kind of hard to find in nice condition, but there's quite a few of them that have sort of collector's editions. Like, for instance, this one, Rundim, comes with a mech figure. So I think that's really cool. Other things like Terror came with headphones. So there's just a lot of really cool pack-ins for the system. It's also relatively easy to collect for. There's only 200 games-ish total between the WonderSwan and the WonderSwan Color. So it's not a ridiculously difficult system to get collecting for, even though it's
Metal Jesus here, and well, I'm back with a good friend, John Henry.
But most of the games are pretty cheap, even complete in box. The most I spent on any game was for this one.
Where are we? This is not my game room.
My
game room. It's your game room.
Most games are more like 10 to 20 with a few $50, $60 games in there. So it can be a lot cheaper and more reasonable to collect for than the Game Boy or other handheld consoles. So that's my favorite.
Hey guys, you know, that's a good question. I'm gonna say my favorite oddball console would be the Amiga CD. I've always wanted to own one. There's just something really funky about that thing that just makes me want one. I had the chance to get one back in 2014, but I skipped out on a trip to go to Canada with John Hancock, and I regret it because he actually picked one up when he went down there. But hopefully I'll get one someday. I mean, that console is just like, I don't know, it's just really weird. I don't know what to really say about it. I know when I get one, it'll be hard to find games for it because I never see them on eBay. But that's definitely one.
In fact, the main guy in Europe ended up crashing a $2 million limited edition Ferrari, and he was put in jail for speeding, crashing his car, and having like a criminal background. So that's the Gizmondo in a nutshell. I wish I knew more about it. I wish there was like a historian about gaming, or like a, I don't know, like a gaming historian who could go into more details about the Gizmondo, but maybe that's a story for another time. Anyway, good night. Oh, the best-selling game on the Gizmondo was a game called Sticky Balls. Sticky Balls.
Oh, yes, Wario, jump, 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 Wario. Oh, no, no, the other way, the other way. Oh, 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 hello there, I didn't see you. I was too busy playing my favorite oddball console, the Virtual Boy. And one of the reasons I love this console is because it has some sort of like rebel mysticism around it, because I wasn't allowed to have one as a kid. I mean, obviously it was gonna like burn holes in my retinas or something like that. I mean, we all heard that. But I mean, I got one later and I turned out kind of okay. And it's just such a weird, quirky machine. It's a console that you wear on your face and it's in 3D. It's mind-blowing. And it has really fun games on it as well. It has like Wario Land, which I was obviously just enjoying. Mario Clash, which is a great like 3D take on the original Mario Brothers. And it has like Galactic Pinball, which is super fun, and it even has some heavy hitters for collectors like Jack Brothers. And it's just such a fun, weird console. So yes, the Virtual Boy is 100% my favorite oddball console.
My favorite oddball console. I consider my entire collection oddball. I try to pursue the stuff that's not necessarily mainstream. I know I have a crazy Nintendo collection and whatnot, but really I get really excited about oddball stuff. I take pride in that. And hands down, my favorite oddball thing that I love to collect for is this guy. This is not only an oddball console, this is a rare variation of it. I have owned about 4 of these, collecting over the years. I have currently 2 that are working. This is a white Bally Astrocade. Now this has a long history. The short answer is that this was a Montgomery Ward exclusive version, and what it was supposed to be sold with the keyboard component, which never really came out. But this is the white Astrocade. It's a great console. It's kind of a video game computer hybrid, and it's not really talked about a lot, but it has some amazing games on it. Dog Patch, there's a Wizard of War variation that's a lot of fun, and I love collecting this thing. I always have. I've collected it over the years. I had one of these going way back to the early 2000s, was the first one I got. I didn't have a white Astrocade back then, but it's called different things. Bally Arcade, Bally Home Library Computer, but it's great. Just wanted to share that.
So my favorite really weird console would have to be the Russian Glasnaya Popka. It's released in the early 80s, trying to ride the wave of the Atari 2600, but it wasn't very good. It didn't have any cartridges, it just had games loaded on it by the state. Blocky, heavy, overheated all the time, but you know, you could probably run over it with a tank and it would be just fine. Sure would like to get my hands on one of those. Again.
Brandon, that is an excellent question. What my favorite oddball console is, I feel like I'm doing a book report, would have to be the Panasonic 3DO. I'm choosing a console that is in my collection, and that honestly is the most oddball one. And I think it's because it has such a wealth of full motion video games in it. Like, I love that bad acting. You can just have a full library of those games. I mean, who wouldn't want a console that has such a great hit called Space Pirates? I mean, of course I want to collect for that console. Very odd. Thank you for the question.
My favorite oddball system is one I do not have in my game collection. Like an idiot, I have passed up the opportunity to buy them in the past, especially complete in box. Now they are very expensive, and that is the Vectrex, the mighty Vectrex. It is somewhat legendary. It was released in 1982, and what makes it really cool, it's a console, but it has the television built into it. And the reason for that is because it is vector-based graphics. This is very similar technology that was in the early arcades to like Asteroids, the original Star Wars, Tempest, things like that. But you got that full arcade experience in your house. There was really no compromise with this thing. It was awesome. It was so killer. And I didn't really even know about it until a couple years ago. Now the cool thing about collecting for it is that there's really only 28 released games for it because it flopped. It came out right before the big video game crash and never really had a chance. And so people who have them today tend to hold on to them because it's still really fun to play